Oh, right. It is Up at Night with John. It's not technically nighttime right now, but it's getting there. And I want to first say, excuse the mess behind me because I am in the middle of moving things around and making my studio environment more comfortable, I guess you could say. So there we have that. Now, I have with me Jordan from Ancient Meadow Records, the prima guest on this podcast in the first place. How are you doing, Jordan?
I'm great, man. Thanks for having me back. I really appreciate coming back. This, I guess, would be our third time, but
Yeah,
the second time around, we lost the conversation. It's lost to the annals of time.
it's true. It really sucks too. I don't know what I think it was like a cursed audio or something. I
Mm.
still have the audio too. It's weird. It does weird things at sometimes, and then sometimes it's legible. And it was a I here's what happened. I did not bail ship on that podcast until it was absolutely mandatory to do it because I tried. I really tried. And I even had it heavily edited to where it was like one clip to another. You know, it was almost like it was tongue in cheek where I was like, you guys know this is an edited podcast. It's almost like that. So, and I finally had to like quit. Even doing it that way, doing it like a John Waters movie, it still didn't work. So,
You can put it
there you
through an
have it.
image processor. You got a free noise record right there.
I could have Paul stretched it and got a vaporwave album off of it
Yeah,
too. So
pepper in some Dick Cheney quotes.
it's a Dick Cheney quote. Oh man, we are we are going through a time in history where I really have to say that the general public misses George Bush Jr. Now,
Um,
I did not know I would live to see that.
Enough to see that. Yeah, I'm
And because I said that, I have to smudge the area
smudging. Oh, yeah. You got to get that
and
juju out of the air.
to kill the coronavirus.
You need to get your flashlight for that.
I don't just have a flashlight or disinfectant. I also have a brass cup that I drink my water out of
Oh,
to
wow.
kill the virus. Everything is antivirus here, including the silver nail polish on my nails. That's not silver at all. It's aluminum foil. You're not going to get to me anyway.
Two movie references I can think of. Dustin Hoffman in Outbreak. I'm just going to go full like antiviral chemical forced air suit all the time. That's my fashion 2021 guesstimate.
So
And
now, are you wearing masks?
one of my very best friends, his wife, made masks for me and my wife and my child. We got a little baby mask. It's quite funny.
Nice. Nice.
Um, so yeah, I have been for, I guess, a lot of reasons. We have a kind of social responsibility. I'm going to take off my misanthropist hat. We have a kind of social responsibility to not inadvertently kill one another. Um, so
I
when I
thought I thought we talked about this last time. I only speak American and I don't speak commie.
That sounds
And
like I mean that's bullshit. You're just a puppet for George Soros and the leftist agenda.
it's true. So true.
Freedom. So yeah, when I go to the store, I put it on.
Right, right.
And mostly like I think I'm doing it partially because I don't want to be perceived as being like a ne'er do well, a rake, a rogue, a scoundrel of sorts for not
Right.
participating.
Scallywag.
Scallywag. Yeah, I feel almost judged for not wearing it sometimes in public. Um, so yeah, I've been. What about you? Have you been masking up?
Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah. I ordered masks from Amazon. I've got my own little mask right here. Little disposable ones. That's all we can get at this point. But
You must be filthy rich. You can afford.
we just got a couple though, not a whole lot. But I wanted to get these reusable ones that I got from Amazon, and we got one for everyone, and they never came. So
Wow.
I'm pretty sure, like we're already having to talk to Amazon now because we're pretty sure that it was a scam. So
Oh,
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So now, so now Amazon's in the middle of getting the money back and tracking the whole thing. So that's what's going
Not
on with that.
not only did we live long enough to see the American public miss George W. Jr., um, but we've almost lived long enough to see the Fallout universe become reality. Just
I mean, it's insane. It really is. It's you know, have you heard there was there's two YouTubers particularly, and I watched them before a couple times before because they're essentially like expats that live in China is what it is. And one of them's like a whatchamacallit, motorcycle enthusiast or some shit like that. And they've always had like both of them as a whole has always had kind of a love-hate relationship with China. You know what I mean? If you're a Westerner, living in China is a complete culture shock. I'm sure.
oh, to imagine.
Yeah, I mean, complete culture shock. It's such a different world. It's a different culture, and it's not just different anecdotally. It's very different in comparison to say Western culture, and not on a qualitative scale. It's just very different. That's all.
Yeah.
And yeah, they're I've listened to them talk about on the Chinese intranet that there was already like job postings for when they were looking for people to come help and contain and clean up the virus in like late November and in December. Because I think the people who have, and there's not just those two guys, there's a lot of people who have been talking about the Chinese intranet, going on there and like reading the Chinese in it and saying and explaining what it says. And there's a couple of people that I have to say like, well, if they said that this said something in Chinese, I would trust them. Have said the same thing, that like all of these interpretations of these web pages are all correct. So there's kind of this theory from people who have read the Chinese intranet and seen job postings and things like that, that perhaps this was an accidental outbreak from the lab because they were specifically studying SARS and corona, like the COVID viruses in bats, because their hypothesis was that they originated from bats, was what their hypothesis. Now, there's no, what I'm saying is no conspiracy to it. You know what I mean? There was no, it wasn't a weaponized
Yeah.
virus or you know, anything like that, or like it's Resident Evil and someone just like threw a glass vial and broke and
Albert Wesker.
dun 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 dun.
Yeah. Outbreak again. It's hilarious when all this began. The movie Outbreak from like '95, some
Yeah,
do nothing Dustin Hoffman film. Um,
and
it
Rene Russo film.
yeah, his love interest, as it were.
Yeah.
I think Morgan Freeman's in it as well.
I believe Morgan Freeman's in that. I think there's maybe one more that I can't think of celebrity.
Actor, celebrity type. But yeah, as soon as all of this began, here, at least in the American media, that movie like was instantly in my Netflix recommended queue, and at the top of like the Amazon Prime Video popular right now list. So like people were going and watching this movie, and the film, the plot of the film, it's like I think a monkey, a primate, um, is
Yeah,
patient zero of the virus, able to suppress it one time, and it like 10 years later it ramps back up again, and suddenly the whole world's got it or something.
right.
But yeah, the conspiratorial approach to like China would set out to decimate their largest influx of revenue on the planet. That doesn't seem
No,
the
no.
most logical move for a country, but hey,
I mean, yeah, people have done stupid things, right?
oh
It's
yeah,
true. But yeah, I agree with you. There's no real advantage to causing something that may or may not be around 3 years from now as still a concern. You know what I mean?
oh yeah, and
There's
shooting
just,
foot. I mean, right?
but they do think. there is a consensus amongst people who've read that read like the intranet in Chinese, that this was something like that, and it was like an outbreak from the lab, from spraying of of something spraying on them or breathing in the same air. I don't know. I'm not an expert without that part, but but it was something like that, and that the person who was either, I think it was one of the researchers there, she had disappeared, and a lot of people believe that she's the patient zero, that she was the first one, and
They were
that
licking the toilet seats, if I was guessing.
it could have been, she could have been just doing that the entire time. And at that point, I mean, I don't know. But it's true. So I don't know. I don't know. I know the Chinese did do a bad job containing it, and a lot of that is to blame for what's going on, and a lot of that was just politics. A lot of that was that, and it makes me wonder: is are politics being forced to change, or is there a signal at least that something fundamental about it needs to change? You know what I mean?
Um, I think it's almost an organic process, you know. I've been politically disenfranchised and disenchanted, I think, all of my life. I don't think I've ever really had a lot of faith in the political process. I mean, I grew up of, I grew up. My first president was Bill Clinton, naturally, which a lot of people tend to forget that there was this real hopeful sort of trend going on after the first Gulf War. There was this sense of hope in America, even with good old Bill. Uh, there was at least, how to word this? There, economically, America was doing really great at that time. Um, and then George Bush happened. And so I was at that age, like I think it was the stars lining up, right?
Right.
I was angsty and young and into Os Rotten and No Effects, and really angry at everything. Um, and in many ways, I still am. But George Bush coming in to drive the take the wheel at that point, that didn't help at all. So I have long, if not always, been just completely disenchanted by politics. I don't
Right.
know if this could force politics to change. Maybe not fundamentally, maybe in a practical way, we might be able to use some of our lessons we learn here to change how we let ourselves be subjected to politics. I want to believe that like we could find ourselves at the precipice of humans not just being globalist slaves who work all the time to produce crap for each other. I think this is really the opportunity to make that happen. But now that said, with all of the stuff I see in the media, the way that people are just as stupid as they've always been, they're out protesting, they're misspelling on their
God.
signs. You know, I'm like, you fuckers aren't. You're what you deserve. You're gonna spend the rest of your life slaving for a fucking dollar when you're being presented this opportunity on a platter to stake your claim on this planet and not just trade your life for meager dollars. They're
Well,
gonna fuck it up.
I think the one of the problems with a lot of this is with like the protests and things like that is it can be traced down, if I'm not mistaken. I could be. Leave in the comments if you think I am. But if I'm not mistaken, this is some kind of militia group who's essentially behind this entire. They're like a prepper militia group called Liberty something. I can't think of it, but it has something like that in there. That doesn't help, does it? Far right militia group
Are they white now?
with liberty in the name. Mm-hmm. But that's essentially who is really behind this whole thing, and it makes me sad because I think I think there are people who are not union workers, right? Because right now, like at least in from the unions that I've been able to be in contact with and know about, they've doing a pretty okay job protecting everyone right now,
Well, the
financially.
point of the union, right, is
Right.
to protect your workers.
Right. And in this one, they've done a good job. You know what I mean? They've done their job. You don't see steel workers, or I mean, which very little steel workers there are, but still, you don't see any union workers out there being like, "Hey, we're getting a raw deal." You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
You're only seeing people who have who are unfortunate victims of this entire situation come out and be like, "Well, we have a raw deal." And what happened is that some prepper militia far right group comes in and swoops in when they're vulnerable and comes in and is like, hey, well, you know what? It's not just that. We can actually be proactively outraged because this is anti-constitutional. And then they, they do their whole thing, constitutional. They do the whole constitution. It's so bullshit. And I tell you, this is why I think it's bullshit. I don't think the Constitution's bullshit or anything like that. But what it's bullshit about it is that like no one cared about the Fourth Amendment when the Patriot Act was being signed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like no one seems to care about like that amendment ever. Like cops do crazy shit. No one turns to the Fourth Amendment and says, hey, this is unconstitutional. You know what I mean?
Window of my car and jerk me out of it.
Right. But you know what I'm saying? Like
No.
it's funny that one's for sale, but the first and second are not. And that kind of like weird, this one's more important than, you know what I mean? It's like, that's what I don't understand. I'm like, well, it makes no sense to me because you would think that like,
Yeah, the Fourth Amendment. If we're gonna like sovereignty and power, um, as long as
if you're
the fourth one, right, then you can
right,
1 and 2 as much as you want.
that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. If you're like really like this libertarian guy, right? Why isn't your passion for that amendment?
I'll tell you why. It's not about logic. It's not about intelligence. As a matter of fact, I would argue it's about the inverse. It's about the degeneration of those two things.
I think a lot of a lot of what's going on is a dangerous thing, which is where you get like politics and either religion, or you get politics and religious fervor mixed together, which is
Oh, yeah.
always a bad.
Oh, just put them together.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm sure there's been, not I'm sure there has been theocracies throughout the world that, at least for its small time and small population, worked, for whatever time and whatever. But I'm talking like when politics become like a religion. You know what I mean? Like when that becomes like personified as religion, activity as religion, ritual as religion. You know what I mean? That's where it gets weird.
And it embodies it almost if you look at it structurally. I mean, all politics, especially modern political dogmas, as it were, they embody religions in many ways. They have a figurehead or figureheads. And you have, the subject and the master, the ruler and the subject. And the fervor bit, yeah, there's nothing wrong with religious fervor, I guess, in moderation. I don't really care to hear anybody praying, but if you're going to be fervent about that, then that's okay. Religious fervor is one thing, and I understand there's proselytizing, and that can be problematic for me. But political fervor is much different because there are real world stakes.
Right.
In this fervor, there's not really any consequence because it's not real. And,
Right.
so in politics, though, it's much different because there is a consequence. You really have to concern yourself with what you say and what other people say, and so that's when it gets very messy, when we start trying to police what we're saying to each other, and it could be academic and scholarly. Well, this person's telling lies and blah, blah, but that's not Americans don't care about that shit. They're not going to pay attention. It's demagoguery. They
Yeah, it's awfully for me. I do believe that it's not the ideology itself that's so appealing to so many people. It's the ability to use them as a cudgel
no,
that
yeah.
is appealing to people. You know what I mean? Like that's I think is what people like is that they're like, oh, whoa, really? I can use that to knock people out with. You know what I mean? I think a lot of people are cruel.
Internet. It's that feeling of that air of condescending superiority when you call someone a poser. It does feel good. You fucking poser. And this is the same thing when you dunk on somebody politically, or at least you feel like you've dunked on someone politically. Yeah, it's a very powerful thing. I think there's probably like a huge rush of endorphins that follow that.
That's what get me. You know, I understand that we can't go back in time, but to me, that's why I feel like there should be at least a wrestling match with an election
Oh man.
because I need a victory, not a
Uh,
subjective one.
let's do the Fight Club scene here.
I need an objective victory of something. I can't, you know what I mean? There's too much
Two,
subjective,
three.
subjectivity. Yeah.
Hey, that's
When
like
it comes to that.
that subjectory.
Hey, I'm so embarrassed to drink this monster. This is like the boomer monster,
Uh,
the white one, and
zero.
I'm drinking it.
So I prefer the zero sugar. I have a thing about sugar, right? The TV told me that sugar was bad, so I listened.
The TV told me. Yeah, I know it is. It's pretty bad for you. I mean, at least from a standpoint of if you're, I don't know what I was going to say. From a standpoint of at least from calories, it's really bad. It's just extra calories. You know what I mean? Brings it on, and
And a
that's
lot
why I drink this sugar free once.
or whatever, like they synthesize them out of some chemical process. They don't digest very well, I've heard. So if I'm gonna drink a monster, it's the Boomer Monster. I'm going
Yeah,
sugar.
me too.
I'll take all those fucking stimulants all day long. No sugar.
It's almost hypocritical, right? Like, but it's one that I accept.
Oh,
I'm like, I don't give a fuck. Yeah. So what?
talked about, I think in the first episode you did, we talked about how it's completely reasonable to possess two conflicting ideas, like, and you can even you can put that into an energy drink. You can possess
Right.
two ideas in that energy drink.
That could be like the whole angle of it. New hypocrite energy drink.
Yeah.
We don't have any side.
Earlier we were talking
Awesome.
about the political implications of life these days, and I had this brief thought to that end. Um, how everything is kind of this like subversive, backwards, creepy kind of marketing thing these days, like all over politics. Everyone's
Right.
agenda is kind of layered beneath 20 inches of bullshit you have to like get through to figure out what they're really trying to sell you. And so it's made us all, I think, as a country,
Sorry.
as a planet full of little creatures, it's anything sentient is now just paranoid all the time.
No, it's true. You know, there's something poignant that Karl Marx said. Okay, and I'm about to anyone who is a anti-Marxist is like getting angry right now. But
They've turned
and
it off.
I'm not a Marxist, or nor am I like a whatever a communist, whatever you want to call it. But he did say something that was very valuable. One of the many things, but one of the things that was really interesting was he said was that in bourgeoisie society, like they go through cyclical revolutions. That's what happens. It's over and over and over. It's never stayed in true techniques of production or of craftsmanship. It's going through always cycles of revolutions of new, and eventually that trickles down to the consumer as well. And that's where his sentiment that capitalism can't survive comes from. Essentially, is that like it's this funneling, like a toilet drain. You know what I mean? Now, I'm not sure if that's what's going to happen to capitalism, but it is true. It is a very insightful observation from Marx that to live in this time, to live in this kind of society, it's always these mini revolutions over and over, and we become fatigued by them, you know. And I think we go through stages of emotions through them, and I think we're going through the annoyance stage right now. You know what I mean? Like the irritation stage.
About 30 years into it now.
Right? It's true. That is true. That is true. We're moving into the violent biting stage.
I hate making Rick and Morty references. It's become this like self-perpetuating meme, of course. But the idea of having like purge planets out there, where their semblance of peace and prosperity is maintained only by once a year. All
Oh
across.
yeah. I remember that, where they landed in that planet, and
Fucking purge you, Morty.
that was the last time I watched Rick and Morty. Was back in those days. Like I said, season 2. Was that season 2 or season 1? I can't remember. That was like 2016, 15-ish days.
That was before like it became you could be made fun of for watching it, which
Right.
like
It's true.
no.
It's so true that it became the new Family Guy, right? You can get
Yeah.
Rick and Morty shirts from Walmart and shit like that.
And I remember there was a time where like Family Guy had definitely apex. It had reached its apex, and like yeah, you could be made fun of for it. And thankfully that passed. And
I,
it's
I
again.
feel like Family Guy's transforming into something that we've never seen before.
It's very original, right? So people hate it, and understandably so. Sometimes it's very easy to hate, but I gotta hand it to the writers. They have made some commentary on modern society and uh, the days of yore as well, on the way we used to be. They've made some commentary that is just hilarious, in my opinion.
You know, in talking about that, if you compare The Simpsons and Family Guy, The Simpsons took like the Karl Marx approach, right? It's just stayed, tried and true. This is what we do, and this is how we do it.
This is what
And
works.
yeah, this is what works. We're not out here trying to reinvent the wheel. We got what we need, you know. And Family Guy is like the bourgeoisie mini revolutions over and over again. Just they crash and burn, and then they rise up, and they get to like these crazy heights, and then they just crash back down, and millions die. And
Bring it back, worn out tools over and over.
yeah, I mean, and for people listening on who would be like, well, millions died under Marxism. Like millions died under everything. I mean, that's just the
And
truth.
I mean, capitalism's killing people right now.
Yeah, nothing is a monolith. You know what I mean? I mean, like show me Marxism. You know what I mean? Show it to me. Like give it to me, and like if not, then it's just an abstraction, right? It's just like a word we give for some shit, right? It's just like same as capitalism or anything like that. Like,
Paste this word over all the things that contradict how I think. I'm just gonna
yeah, I
swerve.
mean, we in our current economy, right? We do things that are left and right all day long. You know what I mean? We do things that have tones of socialism and Marxism to it. We have things that have tones of and Randian almost survival of the fittest.
Ooh, Fountainhead,
Right. So
libertarianism.
I've often wondered about that. Like the more and more like humans are going on, right? They go on through history and develop and things, and they keep using more and more of what's around them, which becomes bigger and bigger because it becomes as big as the world. And then from there, like when things like government or cultures around it start forming or developing, that's where I wonder if yeah, man, you know what, I just fucking lost my whole train of thought. Like don't even worry about it.
That reminds me on maybe the second time we were talking, we touched briefly on fuck. Now I've lost it. God damn it.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Anyways, like it is what it is. Um,
Love that about Scorsese's most recent movie, The Irishman.
yeah,
That's this refrain in the film. It's beautiful. It's repeated. I think Joe Pesci's character is responsible for the line, but he says it no less than 10 times in the movie, and it is what it is. And it really is this resounding kind of reminder that ultimately uh, we are completely out of control. Even when we have like a semblance of control, like we elect presidents and stuff, and like we got NASA, and we're going up to the moon and sending satellites out and shit. And then you think about it, like, man, that is just underwhelming when you compare it to the absolute silence of the cosmos, just infinitely uncaring. And I love that. It's a very comforting reminder. It's a very nihilistic tendency, right? But it's a very comforting reminder. It is.
it's a very Sartrean view of the universe.
Just and Heidegger to an extent, just fucking with my head still.
I feel you. I'm not sure where I would fall. Um, it's hard these days to say that you like Nietzsche because it's immediately now owned by edge lords. So
Because I mean, it's just he's called the most misunderstood philosopher of all time, and it's true. Nietzsche would fucking hate white nationalists. He would hate these edgelord twats.
of course, yeah. I mean, all of this herd behavior.
Oh
Uh,
god, we would vomit at the thought of it.
yeah. Well, and I think that's where I find myself most aligned with Nietzsche is that I believe that the more people try to institutionalize niceness in any way, shape, or form. Now, I don't mean like just politically. I'm talking, religiously or anything like that. The more likely the inverse is going to happen. That there's a rise in cruelty. There's a rise, like pockets of it form inside those orders. You know what I mean? I think that. So I'm immediately always like suspicious of things like that. I'm not suspicious of people, like individuals, but of those kinds of institutions, I guess you could say.
Oh,
It's
absolutely. I mean, the skepticism is not only warranted; it's totally necessary. One of my and I hate going back to banal platitudes and little axioms or idioms that like bumper sticker philosophies,
right.
but I have one that's just my favorite, and it's a very simple: anything in excess becomes its opposite. And so you can apply it to several different other banal platitudes
Right.
in our lexicon, our language, like too much of a good thing is bad enough. Same principle, right? Anything in excess becomes its opposite. So I like to think of that. Um, Too much freedom becomes no freedom, right? And that's essentially where we've led ourselves, is that in this infinite pursuit of democracy, right, of freedom, we've really just come full circle, and we're right back to now, where you can't do anything without a permit, or it being illegal in some sort of nuanced way. Like, well, technically,
Yeah,
you
I mean that's like the whole point of Brave New World, right? That's the whole thing. Like there was slavery in the freedom because they could have sex with whoever they wanted, like whenever they wanted to do it, and take a break from work, do this and that, as long as they did it in the fashion that essentially they were softly told to do. It's like soft fascism, right? It's like velvet fascism.
fashion with comfortable pillows.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, man. And it's very Orwellian. The axiom, the idiom, whatever. It's ignorance is strength, war is peace, freedom is slavery. Anything in excess becomes its opposite. Too much good becomes bad. there's a moderation. I really hate Christianity. I think I've pretty much said that 1,000 times on record. I hate Western uh, mysticism. I hate all of that shit with a passion. But Saul of Tarsus, also known as the Apostle Paul, said, all things in moderation. And I got to give it to the guy, whether he was real or not. Um, he was onto something there, and that moderation is very much crucial in the pursuit of happiness, life, love, and happiness. Moderation is very much up there.
Oh, of course. Yeah. I agree with you on that one. Paul or Shaul was of Tarsus was he was a real person. He was, but uh, yeah, it's arguable that he's the kind of the reason why Christianity is as um, restrictive as
Yeah. He had some very monastic tendencies.
yeah, and I think the other thing is he kind of was saying it like with authority by proxy, right? He was just all like, well, like one day I was walking around and I saw Jesus, and he told me
Saint him.
this is how we do things now, and that's kind of how he worked it, right? I mean, no one was there when that happened, so no one saw Jesus either, right? There wasn't like 100 people being like, and we did too. Like, no, it was just him, and
Just
he's
him.
all like, hey, so this is how we do things now.
I like even though so there's two-parter in there. It's very loaded. Part one obviously is that most modern Christians, and it's obviously they don't teach this because it immediately undermines the validity of Christianity or any Judeo-Christian religion, is that none of the scriptures were written even within a decade. I mean, even within 3 decades, hardly of the supposed time that these things took place, right? So it's like me writing your autobiography 30 years after you died, and I had never ever met you, and so I'm investing all of this emphasis and detail on describing the life of John, but having
Yeah, I mean,
no.
Paul was, I think he was 20 or 30 years in the future, right? Of like
Oh yeah,
after the death of Christ, right? That was the whole thing. Like, it was like a long time afterwards
whole
too.
thing.
Like,
And then so the synoptic gospels, of course, they came after Paul, right? So those are even further in the future.
right.
Then so I love that's part one of that their comment is that that is never really explicitly talked about. It's very much a hush hush type deal. Um,
Yeah.
and then part two, yeah. So at the time, when all of this is catching on, and Paul goes out, Saul goes out and starts thus began his ministry, and begins to spread the gospel. The Gnostics, the earliest examples of Christians, they had a real issue with the way that the monastic church took, and the Romans really are the reason. The Romans gave
And
Jesus his divinity.
Paul distract him.
Oh
He
yeah,
he distract Simon of wherever he's from, and it was in his name. Maybe it was Simon the Nazarene. I don't remember, but of the magician in the Acts of the Apostles, when he's all like, "Hey, how much does it cost to do that cool shit you do?" And he's all like, "Oh, thou can't do that," and then gets all holier than thou on him, and he's like, "Be gone, wizard!" And that guy
yeah.
was
Better
the
word to that guy and to the Gnostic guy, Simon.
yeah, that
Yeah,
was, and he distracted him. He straight up gave him a diss rumor. Like,
yeah.
he's like, "Oh, that dude can't try to come up and buy what I had." You know what I'm saying? Like, that's the kind of guy you're dealing with, trying to buy it,
By
materialistic.
this shit.
It's true though. Like, it's hilarious that happened, but it's true. But Simon was also rumored to be able to harvest an entire field with a scythe
Oh wow.
with his magical powers, though. Like, he could,
Like all in one go, he could just
like like the Sorcerer's Apprentice Disney style, like like
just set the
yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
I love mythology, man. Like these stories we came up with. Samson, like that's a a really really great little story. Hercules. Um,
I'd like to think that if all I had to do was keep my hair, like, then you're not cutting my hair. You know what I mean? Like,
grow that out, fool.
yeah, I don't understand that. I've never understood that business. I've never understood that business. I mean, I know that I've I know that my lust has gotten me in trouble in my life before, sure, but like if I had like the strength that he had, like there's no way I would give that up. Like, what are you
Oh,
talking about?
no way, man.
Psh, no.
I'd be in the sideshow just bending cars in half.
Well, I could get like all the chicks, right? I mean, like I'm Samson, you know. You know what I mean? Like I'm not going to just focus on one who wants to cut my hair.
Nah,
Now
I'm
there'd be like 99 chicks that just want to keep my hair the same length.
gonna
You
let it
know?
be.
Yeah, you're a superhero. Or dudes if Samson was gay, who knows? But hey, either way,
And I'm strong AF.
exactly. I never understood that. I mean, I get the allegorical part. But sometimes, man, I just want a little realism.
I find parables, storytelling, I guess, we've really lost touch with the power of that. I think that like the Grimm brothers fairy tales were kind of the last great body of work with allegorical myth and imbuing stories with morality or a moral lesson of sorts.
I think I think after that, Star Trek is probably your
Where you're
biggest
going
one.
next, yeah. You
Not
got
seriously. Gene Roddenberry was that's probably the most famous and successful moral plays. You know what I mean? Like those episodes essentially just moral plays written by Gene Roddenberry.
well, you also had several representations of like typical um, hero figures from mythology. You had your brazen leader who's ready to shoot from the hip and get it done, whatever it is. And you had the all-knowing sort of seer, the oracle, the prophet of
Oh
sort.
yeah.
Um, and then you had the character with a tragic flaw who had maybe perhaps this one ability, but with this, like
You just opened my mind to a possibility that like the original Star Trek was essentially like archetypes that lived inside of a brain. Like the
biblical
Enterprise was
brain.
actually someone's mind, right? Like I don't know if you know this, but remember the show? It was called Herman's Head. It's from the '90s, and that's what it was. Like all these people are just in his head, and they do funny shit, whatever. And then he goes
Yeah,
and yeah. So this is like the first Herman's Head, intergalactic Herman's Head. He had
being
like
on Malkovich, it's just all head.
yes, exactly, exactly. That's what I'm saying, and they're all just living in there, just doing their thing, trying to get by. And like Captain Kirk is like his id. It's just his just unrivaled animal instincts. I want.
All back brain, all lizard brain,
It's
no frontal cortex involved.
yeah. Spock is his super ego. Yeah, that totally works for me. I think I know that during the next generation is when Gene Roddenberry really ramped up the moral playism, I guess you could say, in the writing, because he said that he did, and so he was very aware of it. and
I am admittedly, I don't know fuck all about Star Trek after Shatner, and I only know about that, I guess, because when I was growing up, it was kind of on. It was on Sci-Fi still,
mhm.
so um, the next generation is that with Captain Picard.
Yes, that's the one with Patrick Stewart, Captain Picard, and
Show,
I gotta say, I'm not gonna lie. That was my favorite one ever, and I think it's still amazing to this day. I think the writing holds up. I think a lot of people are kind of jaded. They look at it now and they're like, "No, I don't like that. I like the ones that have realism. I like the ones that have realism too." But I I think like if we're looking at like as a craft, you look at writing as a craft or production as a craft. you ain't beating that one. That's top craft. You
I
know what
could
I
see
mean?
people easily associating uh, more closely or feeling a little bit more appreciative of that one just by virtue of growing up with it. It
Right.
was created in the 90s, right? That was
Yeah, it was me. Well, yeah, technically the late '80s, but yeah, it was all '90s though.
yeah. I feel
Yeah.
like people in our generation, as it were, I feel like they can more closely identify with that particular series or that era of Star Trek
Oh yeah,
just by
most
virtue of
definitely.
nostalgia.
But, think about it this way too. Like, think about it from a standpoint of uh, they had egalitarian. It was their society was completely egalitarian in the Federation
Yeah,
ship, and they called each other sir. Right? They called women sir too. Like they didn't just say ma'am; they would say sir. And the first episode, they really wanted to drill this home, like the future would be egalitarian, that they had skirts on the men. The men had skirts in the first episode. Like,
remember this the reddish maroonish color,
yeah, like a kilt almost, like a onesie kilt for
that
cat from Catholic school.
like off black with the brassy kind of yellow. Those were that was a great color palette. I gotta hand it to the costumers. That was fucking awesome color choice.
They wanted to drive that home so bad that they did that, man. They did that with to show the future becoming like that, egalitarian, and they lived in a society and have money and
All knowledge. So that's really the extent of my Star Trek knowledge comes from a book that was about the philosophy of the Federation in the future. And so the political philosophy, I guess, and their society supposedly like there was no currency. All knowledge was open and accessible, and even like state affairs, so to speak, there was mandatory transparency. There was no classified information. Everything was always totally egalitarian. Everything was done in a very public way, and everyone had the option to participate in that process. And in some, right, they had the requirement to participate in those processes. And I read that book, and that was really kind of it was a quick read. I wish I could think of the name. I'm sure you could find it on Google. It was a great book. It really kind of made some very valid political points. And boy, were they wrong if they were trying to make any kind of prediction about the future. They were.
I think about it this way though: in the next generation, in that mythology, there is the future that would be upcoming for us, is actually a dystopia. There's a time of war and authoritarian control, and then I forget what happens. Like, it's a big world war, and then when everyone's like essentially feudal now, then they have their first contact with aliens, and then that's how Star Trek starts, like that way, pretty much. And but yeah, that they saw it like that, like it was like this is like the hell period, like the Kali Yuga, if you will.
Maybe they were more right than I know.
I mean, that's how they saw it though. Like, it was gonna be a horrible time, like because and like the weapons of war became so vast, and and this and that. So yeah, Gene Roddenberry, I think, saw a good view into the future. But here's the thing: I don't know. I think everyone saw that though. You read science fiction, everyone sees that as the future, right?
Yeah. It's really kind of a grim indictment about
Right.
our imagination.
It's true. It's so true. But that to me is more of a tribute to Gene Roddenberry for the next generation, because he's like, he sees that and he's like, so I want to show what humans can do. If humans wanted to get together and work to a goal, this is what they can do. You
That
know,
was my that particular sentiment was really my affinity, my affection for Sartre and Simone de Beauvoir and Albert Camus was this idea of human potentiality.
right?
I don't think Sartre lived long enough to see NASA come into full swing. I think he died. I have to go look it up. But this idea,
He
um,
died in the late '60s.
And
It
I
was the
think
late 60s. Maybe it wasn't
he
the late
may have been there
60s.
for the space race to ramp up a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, but this idea, that idea right there of human potentiality, that there was this very real sense among the population that, you know, like, wow, we can really do some shit that's really cool. And then, like, you know, they're the people out there protesting with the misspellings on their signs, ensuring that that future will never come to fruition.
Here's the thing, though. I think this is what I think. I think half those people are duped. The other people are those people, the crazy ones, like the ones that are lost. It doesn't matter where they are going to lean. They're lost. Like they're just
Oh
lost.
yeah, there's no coming. Yeah, I
I
get
think
what you're. There's no coming back for those people.
that makes good footage, and it does, and it encapsulates in a way, can encapsulate some part of that movement. It really does. But I think what most of it is that it's like an episode of something where the army gets lied to, and like they do the wrong thing for a while until they have to learn that like they didn't, they were lied to. That's how I feel about those people. I feel like those people are plain lied to. Now, does that, in my opinion, make anyone guilt free? No. No. Not at all. But
Definitely begs the philosophical question of do what thou wilt, right? So,
I,
um,
I mean, yeah, sort of, but I think that I think we've not been used to so many collections of people that are so hell bent on disinformation. I don't think we've ever dealt with that before.
yeah,
We've dealt with disinformation, but we have so many secret cell groups, and I don't mean secret like in this conspiratorial way, just like, you don't know how many of people who are trolls.
for
They,
Chan.
they actually are working for the government, or they're this or they're that, or you know what I mean. There's like so much now of
It's overwhelming, and
it
I'm
is. It
telling
is.
you earlier about this idea of everything today is like you have to read into it so much and check out the veracity behind anything you're seeing or reading, and it's becoming almost an impossible task. So we're, like you said, getting fatigued.
Yeah. Well,
um
and we're running to micro tribes. That's what's going on. People is running to micro tribes now,
and
and that's
what how do
crazy.
we do with that? Like, what?
We've never been here before. That's what I'm saying. Who knows? We've never. The only thing that I can, and I'm no expert. So, but the only thing I can think of historically that is somewhat like that is the amount of mystery cults in the ancient times in Greece and Egypt during the classical period. There were so many, and it was really hard to like wade through them. And so that's one thing. But none of those people were like hell bent on changing your opinion, though. That's the problem.
I don't even really get the obsession. That's really kind of something maybe back there in the human back brain. uh this demagoguery and this wanting to win people. I'm not saying I'm excluded from it, because I'm definitely, I I get off the same way when I'm able to dunk on somebody or change their opinion or something. Um, but I really don't get it, because in any other circumstance, if we're talking about like the type of fertilizer I use in my garden, I could give a fuck less about convincing anybody else to use it.
Right.
Um, But when it comes to these big, broad, overarching kind of subjects, I'm like, how dare you not understand my niche internet ideology?
And that's what's going on with everyone, though, right? I mean, it's almost like that. That standoffishness is like a fascia or a membrane. That's how it connects to other things. Like it
Yeah,
keeps things at a distance enough for this cell to grow,
maybe
and
that's
then
the virus we're talking. That's be worried about.
well, maybe there are mind viruses. Maybe there are information viruses of some kind, or at least that behave the same way, right? Maybe there are, and who knows, right? But it's really crazy. I think we've never seen this before. So who knows? There's no normal way of dealing with it right now. I think a lot of people are falling victim to that, and they're free falling, and they grab the first branch, and sometimes that's some dude who's like, well, you know what your problem is you're not ready for the apocalypse. What? Really? Yeah, you're not ready for the apocalypse. Now look at me. I'm not a crazy guy, am I? No, I like black people. See, I'm not crazy.
I like
So listen to me.
to have black.
Nothing's gonna happen. So that's what happens, man. They're like, huh? Well, you know what? This guy, yeah, he's not. He's not a redneck. He's not crazy. He's not talking about race wars. Okay, all right, I'll listen. And then they get involved, and then they start, you know, buying buckets of rice and
Next thing you know, you're protesting to.
exactly, because you know what happens, they have a common enemy, and that's the government, whatever that means, you know what I mean. And it's like, you know what the government's done today? They done shut everything down. And
A lot of this really reminds me. I mean, you're old enough, I think, to remember back in the '90s, um, the resurgence of white nationalism in the Pacific Northwest and in northern Idaho, Oregon, Washington, parts of Montana. The first half of the '90s, there was this huge resurgence of that, and it was all this idea. It all was premised on this idea of like the government had been taken over by Zionists, and so
oh yeah.
the Zog Zionist occupied government, and that gave us like the Ruby Ridge murders. That gave us, in many ways, Waco. It gave us Timothy McVeigh, the bombing of the
Yeah,
Oklahoma.
it gave fuel also, you know what I mean. It gave fuel to all of those movements as well, to get more people. That's the problem with those things that happen like that. Is it's unfortunately the inverse sometimes is they get more people or more sympathy to their movement or
It's
whatever.
fascinating, man.
It is fascinating, absolutely.
We're like, okay, you and I, we know a little bit about each other, and we seem like, for all intents and purposes, pretty reasonable people. I can't, on any day of the week, in any different version of the universe, on any different multiverse, see myself being susceptible to being convinced that blowing up a federal building is somehow the solution to a problem.
I mean, I get it. I really do. I get it. I think though, I think specifically with Timothy McVeigh, first of all, that was a cover up. The government did it. No.
Clearly paying attention.
But I think he was a murderer. He was going to murder someone. You know what I mean? He was either going to murder people with a bomb, and thus a lot of people, or he was going to start murdering people individually, because he was writing letters to like some girl that he liked. And I mean, I mean, like, this is like maybe a couple of months before the bombing and stuff. And he sounded like a psychotic person. Like, he really did. He wrote like a psychotic person. Like, he was a psychopath, and it's true. And he was a terrorist. I don't understand why we can't do that. Why can't we say you're a terrorist and a psychopath? Can we have both?
Yeah, I love the statistical data around all of this. I mean, it's obvious that we have an issue with the resurgence of racism in our country, and I love, we have Islamophobia now since 9/11. We've had this massive surge of Islamophobia. But you go look at the data, the statistical empirical data does not lie. More people die on U.S. soil from white men doing lone wolf terrorist attacks than any other since 9/11, right? Combined. And so that right there says enough. Like, okay, well, then maybe it's time you rethink your ideology a little bit. But it doesn't, right? Because it doesn't matter, because it's not about logic. It's about appealing to emotion. And it comes back to that thing, like convincing people of your opinion, of validating it for yourself, or getting them over to your side, whatever the fix is. Okay, got myself a couple of chili boys.
This is what I think. You can take it with a grain of salt, but this is what I think. I think that there are two factors. The first factor is I think that most or half a good part of the founding impetus of the counterculture of the 60s was inadvertently created by experiments from the CIA. And that sounds insane. But what I mean is with specifically LSD, because they did that to people. They just would go to brothels. They give them to people there. They also would get let's think about it this way. Ken Kesey. Do you know who Ken Kesey is?
It rings a bell.
He is the merry pranksters, the electric Kool-Aid
Yeah, he
acid.
wrote the electric acid
Yeah.
Kool-Aid mint. Yeah,
So, yeah. All those words in some fashion or another.
the merry band of pranksters, Neil Cassidy. I spent a lot of time reading the Beat Generation writers,
Oh, I same here. I loved that for a while. Really did.
Kerouac, Hinkle, Ginsberg.
But see, I think that what was I? Ken Kesey was a student. He was a college student. He responded to an ad in I think it was Massachusetts in a newspaper for medical research. That was a CIA governed acid experiment test. Is what it was. So he was exposed to LSD. He then was like, "Please more, thank you." And then, like, I mean, and then this part of the movement was born. That's what I mean by inadvertently created a good portion of the counterculture. I don't think they meant to. You know what I mean? I just think that they inadvertently did it by doing this to people. So I don't think any of these people would have. Timothy Leary. Timothy Leary was a groundbreaking young rising star in psychology in Harvard, teaching at Harvard, and he, boom, changes directions once he takes acid. Once he has a psychedelic experience,
He dropped out.
right? Exactly. He tuned in and dropped out. That's. I mean, that's so. Yeah, and I'm not mistaken. Ken Kesey was the guy who brought that to Timothy Leary. So I mean, it's a chain reaction down that this happens. The second factor that I'm saying, though, because that happens and then boom, things change so fast. Now, if you ask me, I think a lot of that had to do with birth control, because, like, I mean, a woman doesn't have to be betrothed to someone anymore. You know what I mean? She didn't have to. She can have sex. She didn't have to have babies. You know what I mean? Um, she's not forced to stay in a relationship. I think that changed a lot of dynamics. All of a sudden women were like, and you know what, maybe I want to work a job too, you know.
Fucking
That's what I think. That's what happened. Like once they had a great bit of autonomy, right? Like once they had like autonomy over their biology, that's, I mean, sky's the limit, right? you
that is.
can't,
It's a
can't
very
stop there.
uh, paradigm in at large, right? Is that are you responsible for your meat? Do you own your meat? Does your meat belong to you? Um, and who governs your meat? Do you govern your meat, or does the collective govern your meat? AKA, do we have laws? So that's a very interesting paradigm unto itself. And
Right.
yeah, it takes, right. So the 20s were really kind of the beginning. You had you were post suffrage, women's suffrage at that point, and the Bronte sisters were they weren't publishing works anymore. Elizabeth Wharton, feminism was really kind of ramping up in the 20s. And so by the 60s, you've got several generations into it. I definitely think that feminism and the autonomy of women, it did, it's really a paradigm shift in both uh, in the sphere of genders, right? So that also means changes for men at that time. It was very revolutionary. We use that term to describe, the 60s for a reason. That we only tend to, in retrospect, associate the term revolutionary with being some kind of political thing, but there were, I mean, revolutions of the mind, revolutions of our.
It was 360, right? I mean, it was the 360-degree change of things.
Now all those cunts became bankers and enslaved us. Debt.
But here's what happened though. Like there's things that happen in that, and some of those things that happened were, first of all, well, that counterculture rises, right, and by Nixon's presidency, Nixon on his own tape recorded account is on a war with the counterculture now. He makes pot a Schedule 1 narcotic. And
I think wasn't it Nixon, the Powell memorandum, the famous Powell memorandum was Nixon administration. There's been an excess of democracy in America, and
yes,
their words, an excess of
yes.
democracy.
Actually, it's a treat to listen to Nick to hear Nixon's tapes. It's a treat because I mean it's gems like that all the time. It rains gems like that. You don't have to like sift through it. You just let it rain, and it's all these crazy. One time he was talking about the Bohemian Grove, like the whole Illuminati blobbity boopity thing, and he talked about going down there, and he was like, "No, I don't go down those places like that. There's a lot of homosexuality that happens." And I'm like, "Oh my God, Nixon's talking about the Bohemian Grove. This is great." He didn't care.
I love fucking Hunter S. Thompson. He hated Nixon. Oh my God, he fucking hated him so much.
He was the antithesis.
What was the Bill Murray was in this Hunter S. Thompson screenplay? It was a book. Fuck. I think it was from the 80s. Anyway, in the movie, he has like this dummy doll of Richard Nixon. He has like a Doberman, and he just says like Nixon sick balls, and it goes and like bites it on the balls. It's so good.
I mean, at that time, that's what happened. There was a real culture war that had real money backing it at that point with Nixon, and part of the culture war was a race war. That was the thing. Like he made no bones about the fact that he was trying to like keep the African American community down. Like, I mean, there's actually evidence of that. You know what I mean? When it comes to Nixon, at least, this is something he was down with.
If he never came out and just outright said, "Well, of course I'm a racist, son," he definitely didn't shy away from expressing it in his policy.
He would call. I think Nixon would call himself a race realist right now. I think he would. Oh, I'm not a racist. I'm a race realist. I have some beliefs.
The racialist term that they're adopting now.
Yeah, he hit, and so a lot of damage was done from those policies. Those specific policies were some of the worst things that have happened to that. The drug war is started essentially because of these policies. There's so many underfunding, underfunding in projects, underfunding in urban areas. The police get ramped up in those areas. Like all this shit starts happening, and then like the 70s start like
crack epic takes off in Harlem.
Yeah, coincidentally, and and things just like that. The 70s heat up. That's why it was such a crazy time. There was so many after or consequences to some of those policies, man, because of that culture war. And I think that I think part of it was irresponsibly caused by experimentation. Do you know how crazy the CIA got with acid?
So I know about MK Ultra and like their attempts to do like astral projection and mind control and stuff like that.
Yes.
But yeah, I know that there are other projects other than MK Ultra that pretty much exclusively were just for the exploration of psilocybin, LSD,
Right.
all these chemical substances. And I'm like, man, that was college for me. We could have just took notes.
Well, how about when it comes to like those things they did to, I mean, the things they did to people were just insane, just so crazy. And
A was behind like the Tuskegee experiments, I think, right? And that was pretty much racially driven.
well, of course, right. I mean, that's the only problem when like you get people who like You get guys who are like Ben Shapiro-y, right? They're kind of a little bit Shapiro-y, and Lord, that's not like a anti-Semitic thing. Like I don't mean like he like someone who's like Jewish. I just mean like
Someone
he
who's dead.
he's like moderately right. You know what I mean? He's not crazy enough to go like into the YouTube crazy realm, but he's still in in his zone. Um, I think you get those guys and they talk about um, race relations and things like that. That those things, like no one brings that up to people like that. Like those things really happened. Like these are things that actually happened, and they were maybe not racially motivated, but I mean, a whole race of people were considered, or dumped on, and it wasn't like a mixed race of people. Like it
Bet,
was one race. So you know what I mean? And I never understand why people didn't bring shit like that up to people like that. Like, like those things really happen.
it begs the question about what they're paying attention to, right? Where they're directing their focus when trying to develop arguments about these things, or even just look at them historically, right? Um,
I'm convinced that they pay people to come up there and like act like crazy people. I think that's what they do. I think they pay people to come in and be all like, "Oh, let me tell you something, Ben. Yeah, you're a homophobe. Ah, you're a racist." I think
I,
that's they do that.
I don't Penn. I don't. I've seen him say like three things. I don't watch his videos. Sometimes I guess he'll ass out in a very grandiose way, and it makes like the national media or something.
Yeah,
And
I know what you're saying.
that's all I see, right?
I here's the thing, like I am fascinated with people. I'm fascinated with culture. I'm fascinated with everything. So I try to catch up as much as I can on shit.
Give
And I
every
try
shake, kind of let
here's
them
the thing. I don't give I can't say completely I give people a fair shake. I think what I do is I at least try to hear them out. You know what I mean? But I can't claim like I don't have a bias or anything. You know what I mean? But I do try to hear out, but not just to hear them out to be all like, well, what's the merit of your argument? The other part is like, I just want to hear it. I just want to hear the spiel. Like, what is it?
Man, are you familiar with All Gas, No Brakes? Are you familiar with this guy?
Why does that sound familiar? What is that?
Like, I guess he's an actor of sorts. He's a YouTuber, maybe.
Let me,
Take note if you're not if you're listening. All Gas, No Brakes. So fucking good. This kid just walks around in like he's got on like a brown suit from like the 70s or something. I don't know. And he just lets people talk, and it's definitely a case of like myopia, so to speak, right? It's very much tunnel vision. Like, here's an example of crazy, and we're gonna focus on it.
oh, I see. Okay, I'm looking at it right now. Okay, I can
And
see it.
yeah, he just lets them talk, and
Donald Trump Jr. Book Club.
by golly, it's it's bad. It's hard to watch sometimes.
I try to hear people when I listen to Ben Shapiro do his sparring sessions with people. What I hear is someone who is a Harvard trained lawyer arguing with children from college. That's what I'm saying. And I'm like, so let me get this straight. If I were to put on gloves and get a guy who's like 5'1" and 17 years old and beat the shit out of him, like would you call that like an exhibition? Like, come on. So that's what I see mainly when it comes to that. It's very opportunistic in the sense of like it's being made to be seen like academic, like staunch, rigorous academic activity. But what it really is just another show. You know what I mean? That's what I
I definitely so I definitely put stock in academia. If you so the whole point, right? The whole point of academia, of science, of knowledge, gnosis, um, is that you take in new information and you adjust accordingly. That's the premise of all of these things. Um, and so there are conservatives out there who lean into academia, who lean into political science,
right.
who into sociology, anthropology, history, and they make a compelling case for conservative values, at least at the fiscal level, which is where we get the popular refrain, I'm socially liberal and fiscally conservative, even though there's very much a conflict of interest there, which is another conversation.
Right.
I admire people who try and make their arguments based on uh, academic fact, or at least statistical fact, or at least something, anything lending itself to making an informed judgment, an informed argument. And unfortunately, politics just goes fucking half the time, goes the opposite direction. It's all about appealing to emotion, all about appealing to um, the downtrodden or disenfranchised people of a specific sect. Never mind that, pretty much everybody who's not a politician is downtrodden. and and so yeah, it with Shapiro, I see like his YouTube videos, and they're always like Ben Shapiro demolishes puny leftist things.
It's always some like some kid with some absolutist ideology that can be picked apart from like 6 miles away. And you know what I mean? And I'm like, oh Lord. And he comes up there and just talks circles around them. And I'm like, do you feel good about yourself? I'm like, beating up children. That's
He
all you're
gets
doing.
on like fucking he was interviewed by some old guy on the BBC who was just fucking like an old maverick, and the guy instantly just shit on him in the most unapologetic way. And he started getting all angry like a child, and like I was waiting for him to start stomping his feet. And
Well, the same things with Steven Crowder. That's the same. It's the same thing. You get this guy who has a sharp wit and who has a binder full of like information if he needs it, pre-made arguments or pre-made, arguments, and then he goes to colleges and again gets like 18-year-old kids and starts batting them around, and that's supposed to be cool. Like
the poli sci 101 class and pick out full of
exactly. I mean, I think back at when I was that age, man, I was a fucking moron. Jesus, someone like Steven Crowder could have he could have ripped me to shreds like 3 seconds.
well, the issue with being that age, right, is that your heart is usually in the right place, and you don't have that academic footing, that academic heft to stand up and articulate why your heart is in that place, and why
Right.
it's, the marriage of the two, of emotion and logic, and why there's an important moderate middle ground in there somewhere. Um, so yeah, it's very much, I don't know who it reflects more poorly on in the long run. I don't know. I mean, I think Ben Shapiro is honestly an idiot or an asshat at the best. I don't know a lot about the guy, but from what I've seen, I'm not too happy with him. But I also don't care, right? I've
Right.
never hate this person, and so the extent of my thinking about him, if I'm trying to then impose some judgment on him about if what he is doing is right or wrong, like I have gone far beyond how much of my concern that warrants, right? That's like me caring about celebrities who are vapid
Right.
and innocuous in every fucking possible way. So he, to me, it could be Paris Hilton, and I would care no fucking more.
I know. I totally get it. I get it.
Who's the
I
an asshole? Jordan Peterson, is that his name? Is he college guy, professor?
yeah, Jordan Peterson. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That was a phenomenon, right? That was a phenomenon for a minute, for
He
like a straight 3 years, maybe.
he blew up, and I love Canadians. We we Americans have the most biased perception of Canadians. We just imagine the nicest folks on earth and just couldn't be better. And Justin Trudeau's out delivering the paper to everybody every morning. And well, there are dickheads in Canada too.
I feel like the thing with Jordan Peterson reminds me of someone who like trains martial arts at home, right? And then like is always in a fight and is always like, I don't know why. I don't know why I'm always in a fight. Just trouble keeps finding me. And it's like, I
Yeah.
don't know, man. I mean, I think you're really like the reason why. And I feel like that, and I don't mean like everything's his fault. I just mean like he he gets misunderstood and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, you get misunderstood because you say things almost purposefully obtuse. And that's why. And I'm like, you see, you remind me of like a guy who does that, who's like looking for a fight. And then you bump
Rab-
into someone and
a
you know what I mean?
rabble rouser, a
Yeah.
provocateur, an
A barrel haul,
yeah,
a barrel haul brawler.
yeah.
But I mean that's what I mean. Like he reminds me a little bit of that, and it's like I think you're obtuse on purpose. I think you say things strange. And here's the thing: I don't think he's doing it on purpose in the sense of like he's just like like he's a puppet master. I think I think he has some idiosyncrasies about him that like compel him to be that way. You know what I mean? Like some kind of like schizotypal, I don't know, personality quirk of his where
Some kind of drive, yeah, that
yeah,
may be argumentative or maybe thrive on that.
because he uses words oddly sometimes. You know what I mean? And his speech is always using these really lofty, like the dragon of chaos, and he uses all the feminine mystique is chaotic at heart when you speak, like all archetypal. Like he uses these words, and I don't think that you can be invulnerable to the effect of that on your mind after a while. Like, I really don't. I think you start getting mystical. You start seeing things like that.
I could see him being like a cult leader. Um,
Yeah, absolutely,
he
absolutely.
okay, so he has rigidity about him. He's very austere in many ways, which is atypical for a Canadian, and that's my bias again. But um,
Well, he's an Albertan. That's the thing. The
uh,
Albertans are like out in the freaking barren Arctic. Like those guys are all like they're like Siberians. You know what I mean? They're like the no nonsense, don't say much, laconic kind of guys. He's actually pretty wordy for Albertan. Scott Thompson. I think Scott Thompson's from Alberta too.
really,
From Kids in the Hall. I think he is. But no, I get what you're saying. I totally do. Yeah,
he doesn't have the charm of like Jim Jones, right?
I
But
think
everything else is there.
I think though the important part of what happened, I think the important thing to learn from what happened with how fast that rose and everything was that there's a huge segment of young men who have zero direction and like have no uh, call it whatever you want, father figure or disciplined structure, whatever you want to call it. Not they had like they took to him so fast because he came as a father. You know what I mean? And it was all these guys who were all like, "Ah, oh, man, I was on the brink of death. I was gonna kill myself, or I couldn't do this." And then, like, I watched your videos, and I became like this fucking man. I'm doing things now, and it's like they're coming to him. They write comments, or they come up to him and go to his meeting so they can get approval from like their father. You know what I
Mm.
mean?
Well, they got daddy issues.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, there's a huge segment of the young male population that have like this unspoken issue. I mean, it's obvious. You know what I mean?
Just like two videos from him, and I it's been a long time ago. I'm asking earnestly, does he have like this sort of paternal appeal? Is that his shtick?
I think I think he has a paternal appeal. The older he, or the more this campaign went on, I think is what happened. He started getting. I think he started to make more money is what really happened, and he started to secure his finances, so to speak, which is you know talk. That's just talk for make more money. But he went and did all these public speaking arrangements and things like that, and those make a lot, I mean, a ton of
Oh
money.
yeah.
Then the book, then the this, then the that, and this program and that program and this and that. And he made a ton of money. And as he was starting to do that and got more famous and more, he started to dress better and he was more manicured. And that's when that kind of paternalism started to really come out from him, because at first he wasn't really like that. At first he was like archetypally he was more like a Martin Luther. You know what I mean? He was like a preacher. He'd come out and preach to people, and that got people into him. But then he got the money, and then he became daddy, and that's what happened.
Money corrupts. Absolutely.
His daughter though is with some like douchey, and I mean douchey, ex kickboxer dude who's doing like he's got his own little, online racket.
Does he have a soul patch?
I don't think he has a soul patch, but maybe he does. But he's a douche, like like a he is like a douche, and that's like his shtick is that though. His shtick is that like I'm a fucking man. You know what I mean? I'm a fucking man. I do what I want. I do fucking alpha male shit. I don't care if I offend you.
Is he English?
Yeah, I think he's half English, half. It's something like that. But yeah. He has an accent.
What a fucker.
And yeah, dude, he is like a fucking
Wanker.
douche. And he's got like an online racket. One of those things where like
Oh yeah.
everyone's got one now.
Buy my book and
Yeah, exactly. Everyone's got a landing page now.
a squeeze page. Yeah.
Everyone does. That's weird. It's like you're a decade behind if you're saying everyone's got a Facebook. Like, no, man, everyone's got a squeeze page. Like,
You're gonna get that email and they're gonna mark it to you.
everyone's got a newsletter or a mailing list, man. It's crazy. But he does that. He goes on Twitter and shit, and she's like, she's like a meat eater, like does the carnivore thing, right?
Like only eats meat
Mm-hmm.
or something.
Yeah. She did that. That's what her shtick is now. So she's making money on the diet and health and fitness niche.
It's
And
I mean, only appeal to like three primary desires and shortcomings, and that is diet or lack of body image, spirituality or lack of self-esteem, so to speak, and money. And if you ain't got one of those three wrong with you, then you're not fucking human.
yeah, I mean, those are evergreen niches when it comes to marketing, right? I mean, that's it.
But you'd think after like 60 years, like Jack LaLanne was the first guy to like really make this, with the Jack LaLanne exercises.
I watched a couple of those not too long ago. It's funny you mentioned that. I'm sorry, go ahead.
But that you get it though. Like that was 80 years ago. You'd think people would catch on after
No, not at all.
for fucking 60 years.
How about Napoleon Hill? Okay.
In Hill.
And Napoleon Hill wrote I forgot what think rich act it's something like that, man. I'll get it in a minute. He started the positive thinking movement.
The magic of being big kind of thing. Napoleon Hill. Yeah, I know who you're talking. Yeah. So I've read some of these books.
Well, he started it. He's the guy. He is the patient zero for this racket. He's the guy who started the whole thing. And everyone now, all the way up till Ty Lopez and everyone else, they're just
Lamborghini garage guy.
Yes. They all are just using his playbook. That's all they're doing. It's all Napoleon Hill. And let me tell you something, Napoleon Hill, if anyone's listening, I really want them to hear this. Anyone who thinks Napoleon Hill talked to Dale Carnegie and got all this information from him and got, or any of the Carnegies, none of them had any recollection of talking to him. The whole thing's a fugazi. He made up all of it.
Oh.
Yeah.
So Andrew Carnegie and Dale Carnegie, is there any relation there?
Here's the thing. I think one of them's not as related or not related. I can't remember to like the Carnegie, Drew
Carnegie is the Carnegie.
So
I was wondering if Dale Carnegie he's the influence friends and win people yes. guy, or 7 Habits of Highly Effective Influencing People.
No, that's a newer one.
That's another
who again just was redoing the same thing that was done before.
You have to be a fucking sociopath to go out into the world and sell these steaming piles of horse shit.
Oh yeah. I mean, absolutely. It's the thing is that the game is afoot. And the game is always to resell the same fucking thing back to you. You know it's a scam. I've got to get you to not think it's a scam. That's the whole game. And it's never going to stop. That's,
Suspension of disbelief.
here's the thing though. I am fascinated by shit like that. This is ultimately why I watch like a Ben Shapiro argument or something like that, or why like I'll watch these motivational guys. I don't care less for the fruit of the tree that's coming from these speeches. I study the way people do shit. It just fascinates me. People fascinate me, and
ticking.
People do what?
How they're ticking, so to speak.
Exactly, and it fascinates me. I watch them, how they do their spiel, like how. Cause here's the thing, it's a fascinating thing to watch once you've already understood that there is nothing new to it. This is all the same crap that other people before them have been trying to sell. Is it just their way of doing it? That's all. Once you figure that out, it's really fun because then you're like, oh, wow, what's he going to do with this one? Oh, okay, that's pretty good. I like that one. He's like, that guy's a deep thinker. Okay, all right.
I'm disgusted by there's this disconnect, right? That is just almost robotic. There's no humanity. Okay,
No.
I'm going to take, like, my market is disenfranchised young men with no money, and I'm going to try and talk them out of $60 somehow for my course or book, which it's like they have to know.
Oh, yeah.
Even if they're giving sound advice, the people buying this book aren't going to listen to that advice. They're just trying to buy a solution, a quick fix. I buy the book, my shit gets better. Dick gets longer, wife loves me again, bank account isn't in the negatives anymore. None of that happens though.
Right. No, yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely. But the thing is that these people become addicted to the whole event. It's the seminars, and they go to the seminars and they get addicted and they come back and they want to go up to this level. And that's what people, they get caught in, like the live action role playing that you can do with it.
Money. If they're making millions, it's not, they're not necessarily just aching to leave.
No, and I'm talking about the people, like the ones that are making no money. They just give them the money. They're giving them an experience. Now, it's not a fair trade by any means. It's not a fair trade because you can go on YouTube and like close your eyes and put, a blindfold on, listen to a story and get a transformative experience. So, but those people that do, I've noticed that about those people like Tony Robbins and all those other guys like that. And now the one guy who's the wolf in sheep's clothing in my mind is Gary Vaynerchuk.
Gary Vaynerchuk.
Is it Vaynerchuk? Something
like that. Yeah, dude. I worked for him once.
Did you really?
Yeah.
What was
I'm
that
a
like?
software engineer, and his family owns like a wine store.
Yes. That's how they got where they got.
Yeah. And so they were doing something with their online store, and they hired me to write some code for their e-commerce site. So yeah, I got a little one-on-one with Gary V. There, kids. Tim Ferriss is another fucking idiot out there.
Yes, it's just this whole pseudoscience thing. It's this young guy, well, not young guy, but they have youthful energy, and it's this like Silicon Valley young rebel guy who's just hacking things. It's just that's their spiel. It's the same package though they're selling though.
It's working.
Oh yeah, it's working great because people don't see Gary V like that. They don't see him as a flim flam man. It's just they see him as like this wise man on the hill and shit. And he's keep telling you the same shit. He's just like, go on social media and do it a lot.
Just get out there. I saw the Navy SEAL guy.
You talking about Jocko Willink? Yep.
He now getting in on it. He has a scam out there now.
Everybody's in on it, man. It's great. I'm watching this happen like in real time because these guys entered into the scene as wise men from the mountain with untold wisdom to tell you from war or from years of psychological research or from this or that. And now it's like 3 years later, they're like, oh yeah, you want to buy something that makes your dick really big? You're like, oh, you got me. Oh man, it's like that Chappelle show skit when he goes on the internet in real life, and it's like the same thing with that. And everyone looks like some sage until they take the mask off, and they're like, oh, by the way, you want to buy my buckets of mashed potatoes? It's good for being a prepper.
Alex Jones, he did that, right? Like after he garnered all the fame. I feel like what's happening is that there's a marketing firm out there. That
Yes,
these assholes,
yes.
same firm, and the firm is like, all right, here's your niche. We're gonna sell them some shit.
I'm telling you, there has to be. I bet you there's marketing firms for all kinds of underworld shit. Like, I bet you there is, just secret ones.
AK-47s.
I mean, I think they're like for cartels even. I think there are. I think there's PR people for all that shit, and it's true, and it's creepy.
In the formula, it's so formulaic. It's the same every
Yes.
time. You garner some fame through like the internet, and then you turn around and start selling them vitamins and books and shit.
Yep. And it's not caught on yet to the general public just yet. They're not getting too good at pointing it out yet. They're getting there, but now they don't pay Nigerian princes. But past that, like they're.
But that became a problem because somebody did.
I know, right?
And more than one somebody was involved in that.
Oh yeah. I mean, the thing is like it's gonna change eventually too. With if it stops being on YouTube, if it goes to another kind of platform, it'll mold to the intricacies of that platform, and then you will see brand new arrangements of the same flim flam pop up. It's just fated to happen. It's the way of things.
You know, I think one day my conscience is going to escape me, and I'm just gonna join. I'm gonna join in. I'm gonna write my own scam.
It's gonna you're gonna join in and you're gonna make like a dungeon synth like squeeze page. You're gonna be like, hey, young producer, you don't know how to make dungeon synth? Well, come into my website, and then they come in. You just get them. You latch onto them. Give you all kinds of VSTs, all like from VST for free.
I'm gonna the idea of young, youthful energy. Guy starts his own record label, highly successful. They don't have to know that it's highly successful in less than 1,000 copies. Highly,
Right. It's true though. It's true. Like you could do that. You can get in and tell them how to make tapes. And you could be single-handedly to blame for when the entire fucking cassette industry dies. Like
anyone listening out there, you stole my fucking idea.
I've thought about that too. Like, when is someone going to do that? Because someone's going to do it. And when are they going to do it?
The timing, I mean, we're entering a recession, obviously. The economy to take a shit, but never a better time to get started and get on that upswing.
It's true. I'm adding more content to this channel with like a horror short. I'm thinking about doing this anthology show of like talking about fun, scary topics. Like, do it all atmospheric and shit with like a cool voice and stuff like that.
Kind of like an episodic approach to I think the CIA topic could really use.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Like stuff like that. Like I would love to do something like that. Like make a little video of that. Compose music for it.
Yeah, there's your episode 1.
Right. Well, it has been an amazing conversation with you yet again. And do you have anything to plug before we take off?
No, man, it's great. I love talking to you. I love this. I'm so happy to see that you're getting all these people to do these episodes. These podcast things. I have participated in several of them now, but I don't really ever listen to them. but I am so glad to be a part of one that I really kind of like have faith in the person doing it. I think you can really uh, make something out of it, and just by talking to people, it's so much fun talking to you. So
I appreciate it, man. Yeah, I think I think there's not a lot of people talking in this world yet. You know what I mean? In the world that we're in.
yeah, that's true. You're gonna have to fish for some conversation sometimes. So,
Yeah.
but I mean, I heard your discussion with Tony, my very good friend, uh,
Yeah.
my brother Tony, and so I was stoked to him. Um, so yeah, man, thanks for having me back again. Thanks for ranting with me.
No problem. No,
What
I'll
whole?
shake my fist at the sky all day long.
Yeah, I do. I guess I have that tendency sometimes.
All right, man. Well, then I will talk to you much later.